Your heart, join me in the pledge to our republic. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. That was particularly meaningful today since this is actually the 4th of July. We just don't all know it. This is when we moved the 4th of July meeting too, but no fireworks tonight.
Are you sure?
Hopefully. I shouldn't have said that definitively.
I am here, you know.
Okay, with that,
I'm sorry.
let me call the roll. Tim Carroll.
Present.
Ed Imsand.
Here.
Renee Westelusk.
Here.
Judy Decker.
Here.
I'm here. David Janis here. Pat Quist.
Present.
Josh Nugent, not here. West Katzenstein.
Here.
Here. Lyle Fisher.
Here.
Don Zadiba.
Here.
Lorelei Oviatt, I know, was called away to a federal hearing involving Edwards Air Force Base, so she is not here. We also have member James Maurer has resigned, and the board of directors is making a replacement nomination to the board of directors of the GA. So we have a vacant spot there.
Have I been fired? There might be another one.
Shoot, I was going by last time minutes because I didn't have it. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Nick,
I'm here.
Nick Panzer. You didn't quit, did you? I'm sorry, Nick. And I knew you were sitting there too. Okay, and Josh.
Here.
Gotcha. Okay, and Raj John Lagata has moved to Houston in a different job-related item, and we have tentative nomination, but Searles Valley Minerals is in the process of proposing a formal nomination to go before the GA at their next meeting on the 18th of July.
Dave.
And we have a new, I was getting to the non-voting members in a second, and so actually I should have called roll first. Thomas Bukowskis, did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Do you go by Thomas or Tom?
Tom.
Tom, okay. It looks so formal, I know. So Tom's our newest non-voting member. He replaced Ryan Klausch for the BLM. Welcome aboard, Tom. Don Zadiba, did I read your name?
Yes.
And did I read? No, I know I didn't. John Kersey.
Here.
Okay. So we have a quorum. We have two members that are, in fact, awaiting their replacements or awaiting appointment. So with that, Josh is caught up as our minutes taker. And with that, we'll move to open public for any items that are not on the agenda. The public will be afforded an opportunity to address any agenda item during the time that item is under discussion. So non-agenda item comments. None observed. We'll move to item number 3. Review and approve the draft minutes for the June 27 PAC meeting, and we'll take comments first.
Yes. I believe when the minutes, when you start the beginning of the minutes and people speak, you should put their last name.
Okay.
For instance, just as an example, Don Zadiba sits as an advisory person, and Don Decker is usually here from the TAC and makes public comments. So right there you have two Dons, and you don't know who's speaking.
Okay, I have one spelling correction. My last name is spelled incorrectly on the June 6 minutes, and then I discovered it was incorrectly spelled on the May meeting minutes.
West Lux.
Okay.
It's Westa-Lusk, and
Lusk.
yeah, it was spelled correctly in the April
Okay.
minutes. Then the other corrections I have is we should have 4 separate motions for each set of minutes approved or amended. There needs to be a motion stated, and you need to state the people that voted, those that abstained, those that voted no for each of the, because those motions are part of the parliamentary procedure. And you have to state the motion, that you need to state who made the motion, who seconded it. These are public votes. The public has a right to know who voted how. And so the 4 sets of minutes, February, March, April, and May, you need to have separate statements on each one of those. And on the second page, the ad hoc report, you need to state that motion, who made it, who seconded, and the roll call vote, how each voted.
Sure.
Yeah, those are the parts we talked about with regards to parliamentary procedure that are required to be in there. We greatly simplified the minutes now that we have the audio-visual recording, but we still have the responsibility, due diligence-wise, to record the parliamentary functions. And it still simplifies it greatly from what it was.
Sure.
So do we have, are there any other amendments proposed?
Well, could we delay having these minutes approved until he brings them back with the motions?
We could delay it.
Put in there.
So you're moving that we allow Josh to make the changes
Yeah,
and then bring them back
right.
for approval at the following meeting?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Renee moved and Pat Quist seconded. Any more discussion? And that you make the amendments and then bring them back for approval with at the next meeting. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
One abstention. Panzer.
Okay. Any recusals? Didn't think so. Okay, motion passes. All right.
Just for clarification, I don't think this is working, but just for clarification,
You got to push the button.
I did. I believe Renee wants Josh to bring back all of the corrected minutes. Is that correct?
Just for this June 6th,
All right.
just June 6th minutes,
All
but he
right.
put all the motions that were made.
Okay, then let's go to item number 3. Review and approve, item number 4, draft section 3 review. We distributed those to the members of the PAC last week, draft section 3, and we had 2 submissions individually on that. Nick Panzer submitted one, and Don Zadiba submitted one. I forwarded those 2 out. I didn't get Don's out till today because I erroneously didn't get it out of my draft file when I thought it had been sent. And it unceremoniously informed me today that I still had a draft there, so I'm not technologically capable. Sorry, gang. Are there other individual comments on the draft section 3?
I am working on them, and I believe at the TAC meeting, they said the deadline was July 8th.
That's correct. I was about to say that. The members individually have until July 8th. Those will then be incorporated. The individual comments are coming in for the TAC members also. And as Judy said, they were given the deadline of July 8th by Stetson, who was president of the TAC. They will be merged with ours, and the change brought forward and in a public format after that. That's the plan as I went through it today with Stetson.
Yeah, I have one comment. I will submit this in writing.
Okay.
It occurs to me that it would be worthwhile to perhaps have a couple sentences or a paragraph that would describe kind of what the basin is going to look like when it's under a condition of sustainability. I would say it's a false perception to think that the water level will be everywhere the same in the basin. I think it will continue to flow from the west and from the north towards the east. There will continue to be areas on the east side that will have unuseful water. We presumably will see the water rise a lot in the northwest, and I just think it would be wise to alert the public that kind of, in rough terms, what the basin will look like under a condition of sustainability, so that they are kind of can anticipate what it might look like.
I think you were there, so I know you heard some of that discussion in the TAC today that will feed that, and it was obvious from some of the modeling scenarios that have been run so far.
There's still some question about what sustainability actually means too for this basin.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we are working to nail down in the GSP, and we're going to be asked to do some things on that very shortly, as I'll talk about later.
But this chapter is entitled Basin Setting. So it's talking about what it's like now.
It's primarily historical, that's correct.
Yeah.
But it does set the stage in some places, so I think it's West's individual comment, and it may,
Right.
They can look at whether it's appropriate to inform parts here or some of it here and other parts elsewhere.
Right. There was one error that I've found so far, and that is that the Cooperative Groundwater Group started in 1975, and they're off by 20 years. It was 1995.
Okay, and I would make sure you get that in what you're
I
working
will.
on, Judy. Other comments, Lyle?
I was just going to say that I thought the historical part and so forth was pretty complete. Yeah, I'd question those numbers too, and I'd question some other numbers too. But the fact that it's fairly complete and lots of history and historical stuff, I think is real important, because that gives the folks that's going to review this the knowledge maybe that we know what we're doing here and we understand, we've studied this basin, so it gives a top level of that. So I think that was important. So I thought it wasn't too bad.
It's a good historical record, and it's lengthy. Other comments?
Yeah,
Renee?
I have some comments. First of all, who do we submit our written, you said before July 8th?
Yeah, as with the previous versions, the process is these are independent inputs at this point. We can discuss them, but we are each putting in independent written comments submitted to me rather than inundating Stetson. I submit them each together so we don't inundate them with the individual comments back to Stetson. So
Okay.
it's how we typically work through the water resource manager, the process that we've set up
So I forwarded my written comments
directly to me.
to you. Okay. And then as I started reading through this, I noticed that they refer to all these figures, but there's no figure listed. So this is not a complete.
Yeah, the figures were separate, and I think they still have to align the figure numbers in some cases. There were two documents I sent out. One of them, there were two attachments. One of them was the words, the chapter themselves. The second one was the figures, which was 27 pages, if I recall.
Yeah.
I think I only got the one.
Okay.
I didn't
Did everybody else get the two?
Yes.
Okay, I will resend to you, Renee,
Just the second, because
just the second one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I did. You didn't receive it? Because I Xeroxed the addresses of each one of us all together, and when I mail anything out to the PAC as a whole, I copy and paste the entire mailing list. So I will resend it to you. And plus I'll double check the mailing list that there wasn't a mistake in that. So I'll resend it to you, Pat. July 8th is the deadline for individual comments back to me.
Is there a specific time that you would prefer that is the deadline?
I'd prefer the end of the 7th so that we ensure that I've got them all, because I'll send them off, hopefully I'll send them off the night of the 7th so that they meet their July 8th deadline.
Navy definitely has some comments, just corrections on some certain
Understand
figures
that.
and calling out some other areas. So.
Okay, and Don had some good comments on correcting some of the dates and things like that as well that were in there. Other comments from the committee members?
If you dispute some of the figures, just say that you disputed, like what paragraph or whatever.
I'm sorry, I don't understand
If you
the question.
dispute some of the figures given.
You mean numbers?
Yeah, numbers, yeah.
Oh, okay. You certainly can.
Okay.
The TAC is going through it in detail, I will tell you that. Any more comments from the committee members? Any public comment?
Hi, good evening, PAC members. Derek Hoffman, attorney from Meadowbrook. I have a copy of the packet in front of me here, and I see Mr. Panzer's letter on this subject for this agenda item. And Mr. Panzer, I have a question for you through the chair here. The third sentence of the second paragraph of your letter reads as follows. It says, Sigma Regulation 354.44B6 demands an explanation of the source and reliability of import water as a condition of a GSP's reliance upon it. I just read it from the letter. I've always understood your position to be that the GSP should not rely on any imported water. But as I read this, it seems to say that an explanation of the reliance on imported water is what is required. And I'm just wanting to understand if your position has changed to be this, or what your position is based on the letter.
Derek, I'm not totally sure I understand your question. I did suggest, as I recall, that sentence come out because it was prospective in nature, not basin setting driven. The sentence, I think the one you are quoting from, basically said that we could augment natural yield, natural recharge with supplemental sources. And I'm saying that's far from proven at this point, and therefore take it out of this section. It may belong somewhere else. I don't know if that answers your question.
I'm just trying to understand your position. I always understood your position in the past based on your prior letters to be that the GSP should not include any imported water. And now I read this letter to say that you can have it in the GSP, but there must be a reliable explanation of the reliability of that imported water.
Okay. I think I'm getting a clearer bead on what you're going after. I believe that we have to search for new sources of water. And I believe that should be written right into the plan, what we're doing, when we're doing it, when, timetables, and all, and we are doing that. Mm-hmm. My position that I feel most strongly about is that we cannot rely for purposes of the plan upon new sources until they have proven themselves reliable. Contracts are in hand, the various political, economic, environmental issues have all been solved. Once we do that, yes, and the plan can provide for that up front. The plan can say when we come online, or it's clear that we have a pathway to new sources of water, then it's already built in to the GSP. And as they come online, we already anticipate who will get that water, who will pay for it, how it will be paid for, who will get it. Does that help or not?
It does. I appreciate the clarification. I consider it to be a change from your prior position, but I think it's one that is better informed now than it used to be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Okay, none observed. We'll come to item number 5. And this is where there's a change in what has transpired here. I had a long conversation with both the General Counsel of the Groundwater Authority today when I was pulled out of the TAC meeting, as well as the Acting Water Resource Manager, Jeff Helsley, who briefed out for Stetson during the TAC today. And the intent was that both the TAC and the PAC today would have had some tasking directly proposed related to a next modeling scenario and some of the criteria and for the PAC policy issues that surrounded it. And that timeline has moved due to a number of reasons, not the least of which is data that arrived as recently as after the meeting last week of the Groundwater Authority, and this is 7 days later, as well as some new things that transpired in between then and now that raised some legal issues and some other concerns, and they were not able to get all the right people together, given vacations, et cetera, in order to get a declarative assignment for the TAC and the PAC to work on today. So we do not have a scenario or a direct task related to review of items that would compose or create or go into a scenario, but I've been authorized to talk about the plan moving forward, which is it's recognized that there is a time crunch and that there is a need to have the most public and public involvement from the committees, the technical committee and the policy committee at this critical juncture. And they are still working on assembling what they would have had for us today, and they're going to present that to the GA on the 12th. There'll be a special meeting on the 12th where staff, largely what the legal side of this that the attorneys had to put together, they're going to present tasks at the 12th to the GA related to assignments for the TAC and the PAC, as I understand it. And they will come back after that meeting 1 week. That's the Friday before the next GA meeting itself, which is on the 18th, Thursday. And their intent at this point is they may be coming directly to the PAC and TAC chairman after the meeting on the 12th to ask us to schedule a special meeting prior to our next meeting, which is the first week in August. The 6th of August may be time enough, and it also may extend to the public meeting on the 18th. But sometime in that week or at that meeting, given what they know today, and what they relayed to me today, we expect to get some tasking between the 12th or by the 18th for the TAC and the PAC to take, in our case, policy issues, in the TAC's case, technical issues related to sustainable management criteria objectives, and the next scenario to be modeled, and we'll have to see exactly what that is. So there is no scenario today for us to consider or present to the public either. And you'll notice we do not have a representative of the water resource manager to do so, since they were not doing that. Had we had a plan in place, I will say the plan tonight was that either the water resource manager or perhaps a member of the GA would have addressed us with what the tasking was. So that was the plan going forward. There have been some legal issues that have come in the way of that, on top of some additional things thrown in the mix. So member comment on my statement about this, and essentially we could be in a real exciting time about 2 weeks from now.
Our next regular meeting is August 2nd? 1st.
August 1st.
Okay.
And the special meeting is the 12th.
Right.
And the intent today, this afternoon, when they spoke to me, was to give us a call, give me a call, and to give Adam a call, the chairman of the TAC, if possible, out of that meeting, and get us started on scheduling a time, if everything works the way it's planned right now, scheduling a time to get a special session in place to approve this. It could take the place of our August meeting. It depends on the timing on this and what the task is, the length of it, what else might be included. But this is, they are making every attempt in their power to answer our request at the last GA meeting that both the TAC and the PAC and the public have an opportunity to weigh in on this next scenario at some level, because we're down to, we don't have a lot of time left, and we've got to get the basics framework for what we think that scenario should be, and run that scenario to see what it looks like.
I had a couple comments. That seems a little different than what I think they said at the TAC meeting, which was that there's not going to be an August meeting. They had an agenda item to discuss scheduling an August meeting, or an extra meeting, and then they canceled it.
Yeah, the attorney talked to me while Jeff was talking.
Okay.
I had later information than Jeff did, and see, they had an agenda item for the public that wasn't there. They had an agenda item to schedule this special meeting, and it was taken off because they didn't know when it would happen.
But that kind of gets to my bigger point, which is that it seems like, we're getting to the last minute. The comments in the TAC were that we may not get to see the individual chapters. They may just dump the whole thing on us right at the end. I'm just not even going to get my hopes up that much that we're going to have an extra July meeting, because the way everything else has happened, we're going to be likely to get anything substantive to review by the August 1st meeting.
And we may not. But
Yeah.
What I'm disclosing to you is what the planning was.
They've had a POAM, they've had lots of plans. I'm just saying that it seems like everything gets pushed at the last minute, and then they kind of give us false expectations that we're going to be needed, when all we do is get to review things after the fact.
Well, and as you're aware, there are some interesting things happening.
And I'll just protest closed session as well. If they had done a lot of these discussions in open session, we would have a lot more idea what's going on and know how to schedule our summers. So, thank you.
Noted. Any other comments?
I will agree with Josh.
Yeah, agree with Josh that if some of these things had been a little more transparent, we might have picked up on something we wanted to comment about, but such is life. An awful lot is happening behind closed doors, actually.
A lot of the legal stuff, yes.
I just want to clarify something. The TAC is still having their August 1st meeting for right now, correct? So that has not been changed. What they canceled was a special TAC meeting in July, and it was on the back of their agenda.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
What
so
they-
for right now, we are also planning to have our regular August 1st meeting unless
Yeah,
something
absolutely.
happens. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
What, in my opinion, I'm sorry, having talked to them, the TAC meeting, the special TAC meeting was scheduled with the anticipation that they would in fact have something today, that some snafus came about. For those in the Navy or military, you know what that is. And largely they're related to legal considerations that at this point you don't do in public. As I understand it, I'm not a part of it, but that's their best intentions were to arrive with us. They thought today was going to be an important day, and I did too. And unfortunately, we didn't get there. So what they've said is be ready
they say
for
the path to hell is paved with, right?
I'm sorry?
The path to hell is laid with
Good intentions.
Good intentions.
So's the path to heaven sometimes. You hope. If it's not, some of us are in trouble, although most of us fail on both sides of that. Okay, so the plan forward right now, recognizing that we're between a rock and a hard place, and I'm trying to warn everybody, because what we need to do, if possible, is to ensure we have a quorum and look for it. And I will give you, the moment I know that we're going to have a special meeting, or we may have a special meeting, I'll get the word out and we'll see if we can find a time before that. And if the special meeting is necessary, we'll assess what's available, what's already on our next agenda, which is August the 1st. And it could very well be that if we meet earlier than that, we won't need to meet August 1st. What we do know as of this moment is we have a meeting scheduled August 1st. If that's not early enough to meet the deadline and a special meeting is required because we did get the road paved, hopefully, then we'll do that. If not, we'll flex. We talked about this for 2 or 3 months now, that this summer we were going to be likely having to schedule special sessions to meet the needs of the scheduling requirements to get to a GSP.
We'll
roll with it.
I would like to point out that if we have to have a special meeting, it can be a sole subject in special meeting, which might be a lot better than having a lot on our plate like we do at our regular meeting and like the TAC did today.
Yep, and it depends on what it is, and we'll make that judgment. I agree,
Right.
Judy. We may have the special meeting and then have an August meeting for everything else.
Right.
It depends on what the assignment is and what we anticipate it. And I agree with you that if the assignment is as meaty as I hope it is, it may be a special session. I'm sorry, it may be a special session devoted solely to that topic, because it's going to be more than one topic if it's what I hope it is.
Well, perhaps if it's as convoluted and complicated as you, and important as you think it is, we should invite the GA board to our meeting as well. They can sit in the audience and not declare it a GA board meeting.
What most of them do is watch it on the closed circuit or the copy of it later.
They can't interact with us at the time, however.
And they can't also, therefore, have issues with regards to Brown Act. I mean, it's their choice, certainly. And it depends. I think the complication is getting through some of the legal concerns about exactly what the task is going to look like. Any other comments from the committee? Public comment? Okay. With that, we'll go to imported water update. Don, are you prepared to address that? There's not a lot new there right now. We're awaiting some news.
No, there really isn't too much new to report. I don't recall if last month I did mention that representatives from Capital Corps Group did attend the Association of California Water Agencies spring conference up in Monterey. It was an excellent opportunity to schedule brief meetings with several potential sources of imported water, other water agencies. So I do know they held those meetings. There was some positive conversations that took place. They were scheduled last week to make a trip to Washington, D.C. to meet with legislators and their staff. They had prepared a 2-page talking points to leave with the legislators regarding the situation in the basin. The purpose of those meetings was to explain what the situation here is and explore potential sources of funding. Last week on, was it Thursday, I believe it was, I made a trip down to Los Angeles with Capital Corps Group, met with Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. The purpose of that meeting was to look at a concept for a potential water banking project, which is something that's been looked at for a number of years, going back to, I think it was about 2008 or 9 with the Water District. There is some general interest in looking at a potential water banking project. So we agreed to continue to meet and explore that. Other than that, believe they've met with the Navy. They were planning meetings with people in Inyo County. But other than that, I did get a report. They are producing reports to be brought to the Groundwater Authority each month, and at the Groundwater Authority meeting last week, I did share that report. I don't have it with me right here, but it's available on the website. That gives a recap of what they've done in the previous month, and so things are moving forward. They do anticipate slowing down the legislative sessions. We usually go on vacation in July and August, and things slow down, so their activity in terms of meeting with people will likely slow down over the next couple of months. They are on schedule to produce a technical report based on their findings in terms of where potential sources of alternate water, imported water, could be found, and the mechanisms which to get that water here. So that report is scheduled for release July 31st, and they are on schedule.
Thanks, Don. I would add one thing. They did say this week they had lined up some meetings with our federal representatives and other agencies in Washington. I don't know. It was supposed to be this week. And they had done some prep with some of us regarding those meetings. Any member comment?
I have a concern. I hope we're looking closely at the idea of allowing DWP to bank water in our basin. I'm not totally sure that people make out dealing with DWP, but the other side of the coin is I wonder if that might be a resource that we might want to use someday. We might choose to bank water, and I just hope that people have closely looked at the trade-offs and we're really truly sure that that's a good deal for our basin.
The concept that was discussed that seemed to have the most traction would be that this would be a joint bank between the Groundwater Authority and LADWP, and that conceptually, and it seems to make the most sense, that the water district would be operating that water bank, not LADWP.
And so that's still alive. I know there's still discussions going on that, correct, Don?
Yeah, I mean, there's LADWP is always looking at projects, and they have been looking at a banking project for the last, at least I'm aware, for the last year along the Eastern Sierra, and our basin is one that is favored. They've also looked at the Antelope Valley banking with AVEC, but the advantage here, of course, is that they would be the only agency putting water into the basin and would be able to get that water when they need it. And the advantage for us, obviously, is that if it's a shared bank, we could extract water from that bank as well. Of course, there would have to be some trade-off in terms of a different source of water and giving them water from another source, and that would involve, likely not a one-to-one trade, but either 2-to-1, 3-to-1. That has to be negotiated, but those discussions have been initiated and seem to be gaining a little bit of traction.
Yeah, and there's an important piece of that Sigma changed is it raised the recognition statewide that we've heard in several briefings and at several levels, that the fact that we have with the changing climate, and we've had now in 2017 and 2019 a graphic demonstration of the higher rainfall when we have the higher year, that it's very much higher, and they've been having to release water. The recognition statewide, now that everybody in the state has to deal with balancing the groundwater, which had been our mining basket that the entire state had used to modulate or mitigate the surface runoff ups and downs, that now we've got to save the excess when we have the excess, and DWP feels that, and it has changed the ball game somewhat in dealing with DWP. So that has been expressed as one of the reasons that over the last year they have in fact raised this issue and look at this basin favorably. That's my understandings from the briefings I've gotten from folks.
That sounds more encouraging, doing a joint thing with the water district, managing it. That sounds far more encouraging than anything I've heard coming from DWP in the past. So that would be something to watch closely and take advantage of, I believe, yes.
Yeah, two comments to amplify what you just said, David. Another problem we're seeing is that historically the snowpack has been the reservoir, and that snowpack is melting sooner now. So we're kind of losing the reservoir in the mountaintop. The water's coming sooner and not as timely as it had been. And just another observation, one of the things I've heard in water banking, that I guess there is some leakage that might occur. And I would hope we would take equal risk, that we would not absorb all the risk for any water that leaked out of the water bank, that would somehow be shared with EWP, that risk.
It goes into our groundwater. There's always a 10% lossage. They always, that's used to be the ballpark number. Where it is now, I don't know, but but that is the ballpark number. What they put in, they're 100%, and they take out 90.
Well, and that's part of the negotiated deal
Yes,
they
that's
make
correct.
as to what percentage
That's right.
you expect to keep in your basin, as I understand it, correct, Don?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And so that's actually part of a negotiation with them.
Understand, we are assuming that it's heading into our basin, which is probably a safe assumption, but that is an assumption.
Well, but then you get to the more specific points that are relevant at the technical level for the water district or perhaps the TAC about where and how do you, and the TAC has had some of these discussions about, do you inject it into surface of percolation ponds, or do you construct infrastructure with a pipeline and direct inject? There are variables surrounding that, including cost.
One other observation. I had a moment to sit down a couple, 3 months ago with the supervisor from Inyo County, and one of their biggest concerns is if DWP makes a deal where they get more than 1 gallon of water for every gallon of water that we take out of the aqueduct, then Inyo County is concerned that DWP is motivated to make those deals at Inyo County's expense. Because if they can get 3 gallons for 1, why not? So just be aware of that. That's one of the main concerns that Inyo has. It seems like we ought to be able to make a deal that Inyo makes out, but we need to figure out what that deal would be.
Well, that's incumbent on what the GA has before it, is to reach some agreement that protects Inyo as well. And Inyo is one of the 5 votes in the Groundwater Authority.
Yeah, I mean, we left there with the clear understanding that any project like this that goes forward has to be a win for Inyo County, a win for LADWP, and a win for Indian Wells Valley. So whatever concept goes forward, everybody's keeping that in mind, that it's got to be a win for all those parties.
And Sigma's forcing the discussion, which is as much difficulty as it causes us, it's a good thing.
Nature is involved. Right now with the snowpack, there's plenty of snow for like sports, like skiing, to go all the way through August, which is unusual, given it really is. But a warm rain can send a lot of water down so fast that it would destroy the highways, people's homes, farms, everything in its path. And LA has to think about that, because they're responsible. And I think that one of the reasons that we should keep our door open, talk to them about water banking, is that it helps everybody, not just Inyo County or Kern County or Indian Wells Valley. It helps everybody downhill from Mammoth on down. It's actually quite serious if it does happen. It has happened in limited ways. It definitely has happened. So, yay. I'm glad to hear it. I think that the water ought to be saved and shouldn't be just dumped somewhere without consideration.
And from what we heard last week at the statewide webinar, that recognition has hit many in Sacramento as well.
Yeah, it has. About time.
And Sigma's changed the ball game. And I said it last week, but an important comment I believe was made by a senior water advisor to our new governor, in that and what some of what the primary focus of it or objectives within his administration expressed so far is that the number one fix in California to address climate change is Sigma and sustainable groundwater to provide a stable water supply for the entire state through climate change. Because the groundwater basin has been our well to which we have gone back and forth, and the well has been depleted. And so solving it and using some of the runoff issues that here in the Sierras are tied to DWP, Mono, Inyo, us, etc., there are equal considerations in the northern side of the Central Valley that relate to water that just goes out to sea every year and is not allowed to be used not every year, but in years with excess. And capturing the excess and managing the groundwater and replenishing it and getting stability is the answer to the buffer for that variability. And that was what was expressed by and said back to the advisors, and they said there is recognition around the state increasingly that is in fact the case.
It's not a matter of enough water, it's enough water management. And that's pretty just simple.
Yeah, it isn't that California doesn't have enough water, it's we're not managing it and distributing it properly.
Correct. And California historically, for the people that don't know, it has always been higher elevations, snowpack, runoff, and collection basins or reservoirs. And unless we manage it correctly, it has to go somewhere, and that's out in the ocean.
Okay. Anything else on this subject?
Yeah, I
Renee?
have a comment. Maybe Don or you might want to talk about the Capital Corps groups finding out about a Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart grant that the GA voted to go ahead with that would help the GA with funding issues for all the water projects that we're going to be able to probably need to do.
You want to address that, Don?
Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
That was a grant opportunity from the Bureau of Reclamation to assist with activities associated with, to be consistent with terms, I guess, water marketing. Capital Corps Group brought that to the board's attention last week. The deadline to get the application in is July 31st, so Capital Corps was looking for direction. The grant provides up to $130,000 in funding. And there is, of course, a match, but the Capital Corps Group had made the point that any of the activities in their contract would be considered as matching funds, other than lobbying. You could use those as matching funds for that grant, and that money could be used to, again, to pursue imported water marketing. So, and the board did approve Capital Corps to do that. The cost to prepare that application was that I think Capital Corps said $6,000, and Stetson estimated about $3,000 of their time because they've applied for Water Smart grants before and had experience doing it. Capital Corps made it clear that they could possibly divert some money from another task on their contract to pay for that. And the reality is, if they got the grant, I mean, the board is not any money anyway. You get that $6,000 back. So that's the gist of it. They're going ahead to prepare the application, and hopefully we'll see if we can get that extra grant money.
And there are potential future grants, and by doing so, we also get our name in front of the same group that administers those grants that would, in fact, perhaps be to our benefit.
Right. Does
Thank
that
you.
address your?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Ed?
Yeah. I think ground banking is definitely the future, especially in the desert where you have solar. My question is, why are we ignoring our $90,000 USGS study that says possibly the recharge in the future will be $8,000 to $11,000?
That's a question for the TAC. And there was a variable to that, too. Okay, public comment?
Don Decker. You know, as marvelous as it is that we've had the snowfall in the northern Sierra, and we had, of course, a quite wet year here, especially compared to that dry spell of 5 or 6 years. Our rainfall on the valley floor here was about 8 inches. Judy and I have been up in the canyons since early March. That, if you recall, that early March storm, March 5 and 6, really gave us a lot of surface water flow in the major canyons. the canyons have, at this point, essentially dried out. There's still a little flow in sand and grapevine. The point I'm wanting to make to you is that we still are a desert here, and that marvelous snow pack and the meltwater from it is to the north. It's not here. The excuse me, the flow in Sand Canyon at this point is down to about half a cubic foot per second. It's not a trickle, but it's not much. And most of the other canyons are dry. That's surface flow. The underflow in the canyon alluvium is, of course, much harder to get a handle on, that potentially could be recharged. That's a topic for further exploration.
Thank you, Don.
Good evening, Pat Ferris. I guess I am restrained somewhat in refuting Mr. Decker, but I read that report that was sent out that he took a tour up there, I think, from some people from TAC into Indian Wells Canyon. I live up there, have property on both sides of the road up into the canyon. So a couple of days later, I went up there with my daughter with a camera, and Don, I don't know how you missed it, but there is standing water in the canyon and rows of trees that have to live by water. And No Name Canyon has lots of water. I think there should be further investigation, or people ought to go up there and look. I can show you pictures. And so I think we just have to be more resourceful about looking at what the water we have in those canyons. It's amazing. You need to go up and look for yourself.
Anita Emshan, Meadowbrook Dairy. I have to agree with Pat. Eddie and I were up there 5 hours ago, so please stop Eddie and look at his phone. He's got a beautiful video, and there's a ton of water coming out of there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both.
The thing about weather.
Is your mic on?
I hope so. Yeah.
You got to get close to it.
The thing about weather is it's variable, and we're going to have rainy years and not. And so, if you need more water, you've got to have serious water banking, like a factor of 5 or 10 times what you might actually need every year. And if we're talking about importing like 20,000 acre feet a year, we're going to need some serious water banking. Our valley may not be that optimum because of the amount of salt we have in our valley, and the water balance with the evaporation and all. But the valley south of us, beyond Red Rock Canyon, was the site of a very ambitious water banking project, which apparently has been canceled. But the idea was to put solar on top and major water banking underneath. And we're going to need something like that. And I think we really need to put out to the public that we're going to have a big project, and it's going to cost us a lot of money. And can our economy sustain, $40 million a year an additional cost to support something like that? And it might be less, and it might be a lot more. But we need to start giving some information about what we're thinking to, get public involvement and get rolling on not just analyzing our basin to detail, but what we have to do to solve the problem.
Right. Well, the first step on that precisely was hiring the Capital Corps and getting the baseline availability and assessment of both availability of water, short and long term, and delivery mechanisms, which would get right into, and that includes infrastructure cost, grants, all those things to do just that. So that definition is underway, and I'm on the ad hoc for that, and we're pushing for that.
Sounds good.
I'd like to make a comment. Actually, I'd like to make several. Don and I have been going up to the canyons since early March. We have gone up as much as 2 or 3 times a week, as much as once a week. It's very interesting because when you look at the Sierras, the canyon that looks like it has the biggest drainage area is Indian Wells Canyon, and yet it was the first canyon where the stream quit running continuously. The next canyon to quit, I'm discounting Short Canyon. I don't know if any of you have been to Short Canyon, but if you have, you know what I mean. The water basically stops at the base of the waterfall no matter what. The next canyon to quit running, interestingly enough, was 9 Mile. And in 9 Mile Canyon, several times, we walked to the end of the water to where it disappeared into the sand. It no longer goes that far. It does not even come as far. This is surface water, of course. It does not come as far as the new aqueduct, where in the beginning it went way under the aqueduct. The canyon that appears to have the most water is Sand Canyon. No name, if you have ever been there, is very steep and narrow. The water flowed there for a while. It's no longer continually flowing either. And as Tim said, the one thing about weather that we know is it's variable. We can have a really wet winter, and then we can have a series of dry winters. And nobody knows what the future holds. They can only guess. And even with the wet winter we had this year, if you observe the snow on the Sierras, it just doesn't come as far south and as heavy as it used to 50 years ago.
Any other public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tim Parker, consultant to Indian Wells Valley Water District. I just wanted to say, in my consulting background, I'm a big proponent for managed aquifer recharge, and that's what some of the comments have been about. And about 2 years ago, we did a workshop, GRA and Groundwater Resource Association in California, and the UC Water group. And that was a call to action to increase recharge in California. And we got together a bunch of state agencies, academics, consultants. And we came out of it with a lot of good information and kind of some steps to move forward. One of the big challenges in our state is, 2/3 of the water falls in the north part of the state, 2/3 of the demand's in the south, and there's this thing in the middle called the delta and the through flow on that, and that's the big challenge. And I think that's what some of our state leadership is looking at now, is how to fix that. They've been working on it since 1990, which is kind of a scary thing to think. But there's another package there. But really what I wanted to say in conjunction with that was, Tim, you made a comment about where there's good recharge opportunities. And actually, with the aerial electromagnetic work, the SkyTem work we did in the basin, we found a couple of pretty promising areas over in the El Paso area. One just north of the divide there, just west of the divide, and another one along the aqueduct, sort of more centrally located. And these look like promising areas for locating a bank. And the water quality over there is not so bad. So I think that's something to keep in mind, and I know we gave a presentation to LADWP on it last year. Don was there. And so I think those are a couple of promising areas that, to keep in mind. And I'm a forever optimist, so that's why I wanted to get up and say this, that it's not all doom and gloom. The other thing is on the weather, there's a lot of really good technology happening right now. Lots of studies being done on how to better forecast, and that's really important beyond the few days that we can accurately forecast. So there's Sonoma Water up in the north part of the states teaming with Orange County Water District and NOAA and Scripps, and they're looking at how to increase their forecasting. They're also using LIDAR up in the Sierra Nevada to better map the snowpack, so you save more at the end of the season instead of having to dump your reserves because of flood control issues. So just wanted to mention that, so we can be optimistic about the future, and I think managed aquifer recharge is going to be one of those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Any other public comment? None heard. Let's go to our next agenda item, which is future agenda items for the PAC. We've already talked a little bit about this. One will be waiting the outcome of the July 12th special GA meeting, or up to the July 18th GA meeting. I'm sorry?
We forgot agenda item 7.
Oh, yeah, there's a reason why I forgot it. Thank you for pointing that out. Freudian slip.
Was that a mental block or what?
Yeah, it was a combination of a Freudian slip, a senior moment, and wanting to get to the future items. Take your pick. Sometimes my brain synapses don't fire in unison. The managed growth policy considerations tasked by the GA itself. And you remember this group brought that subject to the GA out of our ad hoc on the shallow well mitigation plan, where there were two recommendations. One was that they want to discuss related to fees related to growth. And the second one was the recommendation that the entire committee, the PAC, took forward to the GA that they needed to discuss growth considerations overall. And that was a somewhat controversial topic, and ultimately they decided that they were going to use the PAC the way we were originally intended and let us vet some of that subject. And we met last time, and fortunately the non-voting member representing the planning commissioners of the 5 agencies, Lorelei Oviatt, was here and volunteered to help frame that discussion for us, because the Groundwater Authority itself has very little authority that it can implement policy related to growth. Most of those are land use policies and relate to authorities that are owned by some of the individual entities in the 5 themselves, but are not delegated or assigned to the Groundwater Authority under the JPA. Those individuals, in fact, have the ability to carry back and perhaps coordinate in knowing what the Groundwater Authority is doing back with their individual bodies that they represent that do, in fact, have those authorities. And so Lorelei was going to help keep us on track and stay within what the GA had authority over, and therefore also exposed to the GA itself, as we brought that forward, what some of their discussions downstream need to look like with regards to the coordination that's necessary to make this happen. And I mentioned out of that same webinar that we attended the other day, the number one challenge expressed to SGMA across all of California was coordinating the different land use entities who do have those authorities to deal overall with this problem. So having framed the issue nicely and having Lorelei volunteered to do that and to guide the discussion so that we didn't go out of our limits, she produced a document that was submitted because of the timing. The GA meeting was 1 week ago. We couldn't submit our agenda and the documents for approval by staff until after that meeting. They were submitted late Thursday night. That's the same time the staff was working on the tasking that was supposed to be available for the PAC and TAC today. So I was directed this morning due to two reasons. Number one, they didn't get adequate review on the document Lorelei produced for us. But more importantly, had they not said that to me today, we had already decided to postpone it till next time with their agreement, largely because she was not going to be here to present it. And the reason, she called me personally the day it happened to her. She's testifying at a federal hearing related to land use at Edwards and a project that's going on down there this evening that she could not get out of. And she was profuse in her policy that she wouldn't be here to be able to deliver it, put the framework on it that we thought was necessary and we discussed last time, and certainly the lawyers thought so. So what they've asked for is they now know, they now have it, and they will make this part of their review for us to take on this topic in a structured fashion at our next regular meeting. And yes, it probably won't be a part of a special meeting if we have a full policy scenario sustainment criteria discussion. So this item's postponed.
All right, I would like to say that I have given you a document that I put together in response to what you sent out from Lorelei. These are not the opinions of the EKRCD, they are my opinions. They're mostly questions, and perhaps the GA board would like to have them and answer them. I would like them to be a part of our agenda for next time as part of this managed growth issue.
Yeah, we can't go into them tonight because this item was pulled, but I think it's appropriate that we put that with it.
If you like, I will recollect them and pass them out next time, but you all have them. You can look at it.
You already have the other one, so I don't see any harm in that, but please send it to me electronically so that I can
will do.
Get it. And if it's a part of the agenda, as I hope it is next time, we'll be able to put it in the public read-ahead as well.
On a similar vein, I handed out a document that the domestic well owners produced actually back in September 2016, and before we had a GA, and it was addressed to the mayor, the water board, and the supervisors, and it really talked about the concerns that we have with the competition between kind of unbridled growth and the water challenge. And so we also hand out a copy of this. Folks are welcome to keep it. I'll provide you an electronic copy. It's
yeah,
more
please
historical
do.
Background that we just want to let you know some
if
of
we
the
had if we had an attorney sitting here, he would have told us that we had to terminate this conversation, but because it's not an agenda item anymore. But we'll take that forward with it for next time.
Yeah, even though this was done almost 3 years ago, it's still
pertinent,
spot on. So just
understand.
I will point out that at the TAC meeting, there was a non-agenda item discussed for almost a half hour this afternoon.
We're not the TAC, and I just allowed us to do that. So we make some allowances here because we are part of the outreach to the public. And so we try very hard not to go over bounds, but to ensure that we allow within limits discussion to take place. This is not an agenda item. You got something on it, Norm?
Yeah, it's not an agenda item, but there were a couple comments that they're going to send some information in. We had sent a letter earlier, kind of late this afternoon, to Lorelei about having this pulled. It's already been pulled, but there were some comments of some questions and some other information. If we could get copies of that, we do have a little bit of a concern and like to have some up front.
Yeah,
I'm Norman Alexander.
I have to check with the attorney because right now we're not on an agenda item. And those were not supposed to be distributed to the public at this time.
Okay.
So we'll
I'll
say
privately. Thank you.
Thanks, Norman. Okay. Now we are on agenda item number 8. You now see why I said Freudian slip. I didn't do it on purpose. Hopefully, we will have a special session. If not, can we have one discussion, please? We're on agenda item number 8. We will have a draft GSP update and review, and we may even have a new POAM at that time if they have time to produce one out of the result of the 12th meeting or the 18th. Item number B is, in fact, what we hope is going to come out of the meeting on the 12th, 18th at the latest. Managed growth policy considerations, it's on there. We have a draft document which may be modified or changed if approved. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it is, even though there are limitations to what the Groundwater Authority can and can't do with regards to growth, because authorities they don't own, there are, in fact, some considerations that we can bring forward and get the Groundwater Authority looking forward to that, and there may be a couple items that we've thrown out that could go into GSP. That's a hope. The imported water update, hopefully we will have an output on that, although the final report isn't, or the next full written lengthy report, not their monthly report, is not due, as you said, Don, until 31 July. However, we will have an update likely before then from them on their monthly report that hopefully will include the visits that you addressed as well as Washington today. Any other subjects for next meeting?
I just wanted to make a general comment that when you kind of go through today's agenda and you look at, it's 7 o'clock. I'm not protesting the fact that we're going to be done early. It's nice to get home before 11 at night over in Bakersfield. But there's been a lot of lip service about giving us review and about giving us an opportunity to have input. And we're getting now to where we're 6 months out. 3 months of those need to be the public review period. So we're really 3 months out. Well, you put in some preparation time and all that, we're really 2 months out. So in the next 2 months, do we really think we're going to get a modeling scenario? We're going to get all the chapters. We're going to get to have substantive review. Stetson's going to hear that. They're going to make changes, and we're going to get a second. I'm very skeptical that we're going to get any type of input. We're going to get after-the-fact review, and everything's going to be done in closed sessions. So I'm just trying to get that out there that based on prior experience and looking at the future schedule, I think we're going to get lip service at best, and we're going to be window dressing, and really we're not going to have any time to review this. And if you look back to at the GA, the prior commander who used to sit out here all the time on the POAM, I remember him saying time and time and time again, we're going to get to the end, we're going to push everything back, and then there's going to be no time to review everything. That's why you have a POAM. That's why you're supposed to follow it. That's why you're not supposed to let it sit for months at a time, because you're idling the process, which is what's currently been happening. They haven't updated it for months. So I'm hopeful that we have an extra meeting in July. I'm hoping we have substance in August, but based on the prior months that we've had, we haven't got much review, we haven't got much input, and we haven't got much feedback.
I want to mirror Josh's remarks in that Sigma, the whole tone of Sigma is for stakeholders to come together and work together on a science-driven solution. Have we done that? I don't think so yet.
Any other comment?
Yes, I agree with that in its basic principle, which is why I made the comment earlier, if we have a special meeting to discuss the next model scenario, maybe the GA board should be here to enlighten us on some subjects. There's been too many, I understand the sensitivity and all of the legal, part of the legal issues anyway. I did sit on the water board for over 17 years, and we had closed sessions too. But we also had workshops, and the Water District Board still does, where the public is invited and they can speak up and bring up things. And you don't have that here with the GA board, I'm sorry to say. You have, and I think that was brought home by Lori Wagner last month when she came to give the second part of her 3-minute speech. I understand the length of time it takes to have a meeting, but the goal here is to get water for the future for the residents of this valley, for the property owners of this valley. Without water, we're done. We might as well go pitch our tent over at Ballarat.
So I'd like to back up what Judy's saying. And from, Don and Judy Decker have been telling me for 2 years that we need more water. So what are we doing about getting the water? We don't know. Something's going on closed session. So I'm endorsing what Josh said and Ed said. It's a kind of a fact of life that we get bogged down in proceduralism. It's just, but we should be looking at where are the places in our valley where we can bank water. That's the problem we have to solve. We have to find those places, find out how much water we can bank, and get on with it. AVEC down there at Edwards, they went through this for like 10 years, and they finally got something worked out. But all the players, they can bank 100% and get 90% out. And we're going to end up with something like that, but we ought to get going on it instead of.
It's not just the issue of getting going on that. It's the issue of look at yourselves, because you were on the PAC, I was not. What did you do for the first several months? You worked on and produced a great public outreach outline. Public outreach. That's what's needed. This was brought up at the TAC today. There are people who don't think we have a problem, that this whole process is just to, quote, take more of their money, unquote. We need, in order for this to work, we're going to need the public involved in this. And so, I personally, I guess it's good. Maybe more people are watching this because it's on TV. I personally thought the meetings were better at the Water District. They were more informal. We sat around a table. We didn't sit up here on this little platform. And we need to get, it's not just the PAC, or it's not just the TAC, it's the GA board too. They need to go out and get people involved in this and let them know what it's all about.
Can I just ask, where are we on the agenda? Are we on member comment?
No, we're on next agenda items, and we've chosen to vent, which every one of us feels this way.
Okay, because I just want to move on.
Let me close it. I'm going to. I was going to make this comment at member comment, and I let this go on a little bit longer than I probably should have. However, it's important. I'm the one that gets to deliver, because the water managers, because we have a budget cash flow issue.
Yes.
And we can't have the water managers staying overnight and charging additional funding plus the driving time. And that the GA has chosen to save money by not having that, except it's extreme situations, or perhaps if they'd, and I know for a fact if they'd have been presenting tonight, we would have either had the water resource manager or a board member presenting to us what the task was going to be. So I get to be the one up here. I'm not defending the board. For those of you that looked and watched the GA last time, I expressed the frustration, some of the closed session things. I also expressed optimism to them that they had an opportunity with the meetings 1 week afterwards with regards to the PAC and the TAC today to get us something to do to vent, or not to vent, although we always do that, because some of us always vent, because depending on what's in an individual scenario or issue, our ox may be being gored, because we all have different Some of us have different interests. Sometimes, a lot of times, we all have the same interest. So I delivered that message rather passionately in that meeting and effectively, and I know for a fact that they had intentions to try to get there today. And when I was informed yesterday, and then followed up today, that they were not able to get that together, but that was their intention, I said a lot of exact same things you all just said to a couple people, including staff and a couple members of the GA itself. And they are similarly frustrated. And so I choose to be positive. I choose to be the glass is half full. I think they know what's at stake. I've said publicly in this meeting, stated out of context, it's not good, but it was, there comes a time, I used to lead engineering managers and engineering projects, and there is a time that you shoot the engineers and produce the project because you can refine it forever. Soviet Admiral Gorshkov, famous ship that just made public news, by the way, said it a different way, that better is the enemy of good enough. And Shakespeare said it in King Richard. I can't remember the exact name of the play. Sometimes first thing you do is kill the lawyers. There are legal considerations that are valid involved that got in the way of this. So I'm going to choose to believe the glass is half full, and we will get there, and we'll have something out of no later than the 18th. And I was very disappointed yesterday and today. I'm going to be extremely disappointed if we don't get something out of the 18th meeting at the latest that we are going to look at and be able to share with the public and get the process back going the way it was intended to go.
Well,
so
I want you to know, David, that I do have a pink hard hat you can borrow for the 18th, if you like.
Pink?
I have a yellow one.
No, what I'm saying is the message is going to go forward. Folks, as I say, folks watch these, and certainly we convey it, and they understand it. And I know that for a fact some of the board members themselves share the exact same frustration. So let's continue. We can hold these frustrations. We also have to realize we volunteered to be a part of this. We're advising them, and when this comes on our plate, we take off the frustration, and we're going to have to put our best foot forward and do this quickly and most efficiently and effectively, and put aside any which we all have angst. So with that said, I'd like to move the discussion on to the next issue. And Don, you're looking like you've got to say something.
Well, as most of you know, I participate in the staff calls, and I think the meeting would have been entirely different, and this will come across as an excuse, but we moved the meeting up a week. The reality is we moved the meeting up a week. I think if this meeting, if it would have stayed scheduled on July 4th, which I'm sure nobody wanted to be here July 4th, you probably would have had a whole different agenda, and this meeting would have been a little different. So, again, it's just the reality.
Trying to get lawyers to agree
having the board meeting last Thursday, and then right away, the reality of having a staff call on Friday, trying to get the agendas together, get them posted in the required time. It just threw everybody for a loop, and that's the reality.
It's part of running a bureaucracy.
Okay. Nonetheless, we're all not satisfied. I know the members, I know the staff isn't satisfied. I know most of the GA isn't satisfied. It is what it is. We've got to get it done. We've got a deadline. They understand. We understand. Let's move on. Okay. Future PAC meeting dates, next 3 months, August 1st, maybe one before it, maybe one in place of it, maybe one before it and the August 1st. So, September 5th, October 3rd. Let's go to individual member comments, and I'm going to, Tom, I'm going to ask you to speak a couple sentences about yourself when it comes your turn, but I'm going to take you last so you get time to think about it. We usually go across the top, and I'll come back to you, so I just wanted to warn you. And you don't need a resume, just a little bit about you. I started with you last time, Tim, so let's start with Lyle.
No, I don't have anything further.
West?
Yeah, I wanted to just make a comment about the water banking. I think it's a good thing. I think it's being well executed. I didn't want to come across as too negative. I had some concerns, and you answered those concerns, so I just wanted to mention that. Otherwise, I have plenty of comments on the discussion we just had, but I'll hold those. Thank you.
No comment?
I just want to say that some of my frustration comes from the fact that it's not just trying to, check a box that we got to review something for so many days or different things. It's that over in the valley on a lot of these GSAs that we're involved in, they've been open enough that you at least have a general idea of what your future is going to look like, and so you're able to plan accordingly. And some of them are quite harsh, some of them, but they give an explanation for the people involved on how you're going to be able to structure your business over the coming years to deal with what's heading down the pipe. Whenever you look at what Sigma intended, it was that there was going to be stakeholder input all along the way, and it was going to be two ways. It's supposed to be a locally done deal so that, yes, the valley is going to look different in the future. All these water basins are going to look different in the future. But the reason there's a 20-year implementation period is to allow for people to adjust to the new economic and water and social realities that are going to come from reshaping groundwater resources. So that's where the frustration comes in, is there's all kinds of basins all over the place that have open meetings, that talk about things, that put out drafts. And yes, they're under crunches too, but they've built up trust over time. And that's something that this GA has not done.
Thank you. Tim, I'm sorry, let's do Pat. I'll do it that way.
Were you just going to ignore me? I just
No,
wanna know.
I was going to go back
Am I
this way.
too short or something?
See, we are creatures of habit and territory, so I changed the pattern. And
Yeah, see, I was on the other side, and so now I got skipped. First of all, Josh makes an incredibly important point, and I don't know if everybody heard him. But when you run a business, and I don't think it matters what your business is, but you have to look into the future, in your business model to know what to plan. And right now, with a lot of lack of transparency, we don't know what's coming. We have no idea when that other shoe is going to drop. We don't know if we should buy something that we need for our business. We don't know if we should spend a lot of money to repair something there, or just, put a Band-Aid on it. We really don't know. And having even a little bit more information would be so helpful. And, sometimes that information's harsh, like Josh said. But it's sometimes that harsh information is very necessary. So just want to say, if anybody wants to take that home to the people that are doing private meetings or whatever they're doing behind closed doors, please let them know that this is very, very difficult for people who are out here trying to run businesses and just, get by. So anyway, that's pretty much it. That's what I hear from everybody I have to deal
Thank
with,
you, Pat.
including myself.
Just to kind of add to that discussion, education comes from giving people information repeatedly. And the more upfront and straightforward you are about delivering the information, the better it will be received. That's all.
Thank you.
I really don't have any comment to make. Thank you.
Ed?
Yeah, I think Sigma is a great law. Everybody that's in farming, like me, we have been taught to be sustainable throughout our whole history. My family's been producing quality food for Southern California for over 100 years, and I want to continue to do so. I have the greatest respect for the people here on this board with their intelligence, perseverance, and experience, and I hope that we can use it and get through with this law.
Thanks, Ed.
I think we ought to put out some preliminary information about the scope of what we face and how much it might cost, and that would get more public involvement.
John? Don? Tom?
Sure. Well, so this is my first PAC meeting. I've sat on several of the GA board meetings. So I'm here to represent BLM. I apologize for our absence in the last few months, but I've recently moved here from Alaska, where I worked for the BLM, and they have the absolute opposite problem. They have more water than they can deal with. You know, it's on the surface. They're not over allocated in their state system for allocating it, and I actually did work from the BLM side applying for recreational water rights through the state's appropriated system. So I have a little bit of a background, but you know, perhaps you all eclipse me in a number of years of dealing with this. But basically, I'm here to answer your questions about BLM policy and land use, so I hope that you will ask those questions when they pop up. And, you know, I think, you know, as a BLM is basically a land manager. We manage watersheds. You know, we don't really make policy about water. That's a state issue and a local issue. So, you know, I probably won't have a lot to say. But BLM is also a holder of water rights for the people of the United States, too. So we do have a stake in the game. And, you know, I guess I'm just pleased to be here in service of the board. So feel free to talk to me at any time. And I work just down the road on Richmond Road here. You know, we're our local field office. We don't make the policy, we implement it, but we can certainly try to explain it. And we take applications for rights of way when the time comes for recharge and pipelines and all the rest. So thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Tom. I have my only last comment would be I share what you said, Ed. I have a lot of respect for the people at this dais and out there in the public. It's important. It's the number one challenge. It's something we in the Valley ignored for 60 years plus the overdraft, and it is. We are already seeing the effects of that, and so in one way, I too think SGMA was a good law, although it came as an unfunded mandate, and we were pointing that out to the governor's office and others. It came, like many things in California, as an unfunded mandate, but it's forcing us to face our overdraft issue. And those up here have volunteered in representing separate interests, but coming forward together to help solve this. I think if you look at the last three scenarios that were run, the two management scenarios that were run before that, and then go back and look at the baseline, you have a pretty good idea what might be in number 3 or number 6, the one we're going to get. And I look forward. I'm pleased that the GA listened and made an attempt in 1 week, given perhaps things should have been done before then, to not leave it down to 1 week. But nonetheless, they are doing everything in their power, constrained by lawyers. And I did not say, kill all the lawyers. Shakespeare said that. To make this happen, to allow us to weigh in, to keep good faith with us and the public. So I'm going to keep the glass half full. I trust this group up here. I trust the public that is interested in us and giving us positive input on their views, issues, feelings, etc., that we're going to have a productive topic to look at next time and really get our teeth in and work through this. Appreciate all your comments. We'll relay them to the GA, and I know for a fact we got one sitting in the audience right now, and others are going to see this and not just take the report. So I look forward going in the future. Let's adjourn. Thank you.